Bonjour, je m'appelle Khyati Karana. Hello, my name is Khyati Karana, and today I am going to talk about how Paris became the fashion capital of the world. For 300 years, Paris was known as the fashion capital of the world. Today, it is one of the many fashion cities, but for centuries it was considered as the cream of the crop. But how did it rise to prominence and who broke its world domination? French fashion started with Louis XIV. He became the king at the tender age of 4 in the year 1643, and at that time Madrid was the fashion capital of Europe. Wealthy Frenchmen followed Spanish fashion using silk from Venice and lace from Milan because French textiles were inferior. That's what Louis discovered in his 20s when he decided to transform his father's chateau into the Palace of Versailles in 1660s. He wanted the highest quality goods available, which he soon discovered meant ordering them from other countries. And that was totally unacceptable for him because he wanted the best of best from France. So, to make it happen, he invested heavily in industry manufacturing and then constituted the popular economic policy, then known as mercantilism, which limited imports and maximized exports to build wealth through trade. In less than a decade, this policy had transformed the French economy. Clothing, jewelry, furniture, fine wine. Louis not only created lots of jobs for his people, he also created demand for French goods abroad by using something no one had seen before, a fashion magazine. Le Mercure Galant first appeared in 1672 as a source of amusement for the elegant Parisians. It had songs, poems, articles, court life, and the latest luxury goods, but it also featured fashion reviews for the very first time with the engravings of the latest styles. It was an immediate hit in Paris and quickly found its way to both the provinces and to foreign courts. Louis' finance minister Jean Baptiste Colbert said that fashions were to France what the mines of Peru were to Spain. In other words, extremely lucrative. By the 1680s, 30% of Parisian workers were employed by the fashion industry, which Colbert organized into highly specialized kilns to ensure quality control. Then, to create even more demand and profits, Colbert mandated that new textiles appear seasonally, twice a year, to accommodate seasonal weather changes and to encourage people to buy new clothes on a predictable schedule. Fashion illustrations were labeled summer or winter and featured lightweight fabrics and fans for summer and heavy fabrics and fur for winters. This planned obsolescence of fashion generated huge profits, and France became the undisputed leader of style. Louis XIV died in 1715, but French fashion continued to dominate. When Louis XVI became the king, his wife Marie Antoinette became a style icon, and her dressmaker Rose Bertin became the first celebrity fashion designer. After the French Revolution decimated the French economy, Napoleon Bonaparte used fashion to rebuild it. He proclaimed that no one could come to the court wearing the same thing twice. As a result, his courtiers spent much of their time and money being fitted with the latest styles. Even the Napoleonic Wars did not stop the flow of French fashion abroad. Parisian fashion dolls, known as Pandoras, were smuggled through enemy lines, as was the French champagne Veuve Clicquot. Even though France went through a lot of political upheavals for much of the 19th century, the French fashion and luxury sector still continues to grow. For example, Hermes started as a harness shop in 1837, moved to the luxury equestrian trade 30 years later, and started selling scarves on their 100th anniversary. Louis Vuitton opened his box making and packing shop in 1854 and introduced his revolutionary waterproof stacking trunk 4 years later. His custom designs were so popular among the elite that his sons created the Louis Vuitton monogram in 1896 in order to stay ahead of the counterfeiters. Charles Frederick Worth, who's the father of haute couture, created the modern fashion industry. Worth started La Chambre syndicale de la haute couture parisienne in 1868, which was a professional trade association that sets standards of conduct for a fashion house to call itself haute couture. This association still exists as the Fédération de la Haute Couture et de la Mode. The House of Worth has gained many of the world's richest women. In 1920s and 30s, Chanel, Lanvin, and Vuitton were popular. By the late 1930s, Parisian fashion houses were catering to 45,000 couture customers a year. After being the fashion capital for nearly 250 years, everything changed when the German army invaded Paris in June 1940. No fashion reporters were allowed in, and no fashion designers were allowed out during the occupation, which meant opportunity for the other fashion cities. That's how Paris became the first fashion capital and dominated the industry. It took lots of people with dozens of good ideas to bring it into prominence and one war to challenge the title. Thank you.